Hello everyone. In today's Holocene profile, we're going to be doing is Carolina parakeet is an extinct species of small green neotropical parrot with a bright yellow head and reddish orange face and pale beak that was native to the eastern Midwest and Plains states of the U.S. It was the only indigenous parrot within its range, as well as one of the only three parrots species native to the United States. And evolution. According to this study, DNA recovered from the museum specimens. Their closest living relatives include some of the South American parakeets, the Nande parakeet, the sun parakeet, and the golden-capped parakeet. The authors note the bright yellow and orange plumage and blue wing feathers found in Carolina parakeet are traits shared by another species, the Jandea parakeet, that was not sampled in the study but is generally thought to be closely related to help resolve the divergent time. A whole genome of preserved specimen has now been sequenced. The Carolina parakeet colonized North America about 5.5 million years ago. This was well before North America and South America were joined by the formation of the Panama Land Bridge about 3.5 million years ago. Since the Carolina parakeet more distant relations are geographically closer to its own historic range, while its closest relatives were geographically distant to it. These data are consistent with the generally accepted hypothesis that Central and North America were colonized at different times by distant lineages of parrots. Parrots that originally invaded South America from Antarctica. From time after the breakup of Gondwana, near where neotropical parrots originated approximately 50 million years ago. A fossil parrot designated Cropsis verticilla was described based on a single humerus from the Miocene Sheep Creek Formation of Snake River, Nebraska. It was a smaller bird, 3/4 of the size of Carolina parakeet. The present species is of peculiar interest as it represents the first known parrot-like bird to be described as a fossil from North America. However, it is not completely certain that the species is correctly assigned to Coreopsis. The Carolina parakeet was a small green parrot, very similar in size and coloration of the extant. J-day parakeet and sun parakeet. The sun parakeet being its closest living relative. The majority of plumage was green with lighter green upper parts and a bright yellow head and orange forehead and face extending to behind the eyes and upper cheeks. The shoulders were yellow, continuing down the outer edge of the wings. The primary feathers were mostly green but with yellow edges on the outer primorous thighs, were green towards the top and yellow towards the feet. Male and female adults were identical in plumage. However, males were slightly larger than females. The legs and feet were light brown. They shared the zygodactyl feet of the parrot family. The skin around the eyes was white and the beak was pale, flesh colored. These birds weigh about 3.5 ounces and are 13 inches long and have wingspan of 21 to 23 inches. Young Carolina parakeets differed slightly in coloration from adults. The face and entire body were green with paler upper parts. They lacked yellow or orange plumage on the face. Wings and thighs, hatchlings, were covered in mouse gray down until about 39 to 40 days old, when green wings and tails appeared. Fledglings had full adult plumage around 1 year of age. These birds were fairly long-lived, at least in captivity. A pair was kept at a Cincinnati museum for over 35 years. And for its distribution and range, the Carolina parakeet had the northernmost range of any known parrot. It was found from southern New York and Wisconsin to Kentucky, Tennessee, and the Gulf of Mexico, from the Atlantic seaboard to as far as west as eastern Colorado. It lived in old growth forests along rivers and in swamps. Its range was described by early explorers thus: the 43rd parallel as the northern limit, of 26 as the most southern, the 73rd and 106th meridians as the eastern and western boundaries, respectively. The range include all or portion of at least 28 states. Its habitat were old-growth wetland forests along rivers and in swamps, especially in the Mississippi-Missouri drainage basin, with large hollow trees that are used as roosting or nesting sites. Now for its behavior and diet. The bird lived in huge, noisy flocks of as many as 300 birds. It built its nests in a hollow tree, laying 2 or 5. Most accounts say 2, 1.6 inches, 4.1 centimeters. Round white eggs. Reportedly, multiple female parakeets could deposit their eggs into one nest, similar to nesting behavior describing in the monk parakeet. It most it mostly ate seeds of of forest trees and shrubs, including those of cypress, huckleberry, elm, pine maple, oak, and other plants such as thistles and sandspars. It also ate fruits, include apples, grapes, and figs, as well as flowers. And they occasionally eat insects. It was especially noted for its predilection for cocklebears, a plant which contains a toxic glucoside, and it was considered to be the agricultural pest of grain crops. And now for its unfortunate extinction. No one knows why they went extinct, but the last the last Kelowna parakeet Incas died at a Cincinnati museum on February 21st, 1918, in the same cage as Martha, the last passenger pigeon, which died. In 1914, there is no scientific study or surveys of this bird by American naturalists. Most information about it from anecdotal accounts and museum specimens, so details of its prevalence and decline are unverified or speculative. Extensive accounts of pre-colonial and early colonial have been given the prevalence of this bird, the existence of flocks of courageous, very colorful, and raucous parrots could hardly have been unnoted by European explorers, as parrots were virtually unknown in seafaring European nations in the 16th and 17th centuries. Later accounts in the latter half of the 19th century onward noted the bird's sparsity and abundance and absence. Genetic evidence suggests that the population had been in decline since the last glacial maxima. The lack of evidence of inbreeding suggests that the birds declined very quickly. The bird's range collapsed from east to west with settlement and cleaning of the eastern and southern deciduous forests. John commented as early as 1832 on the decline of the birds. The bird was rarely reported outside Florida after 1860. The last reported sighting of east of the Mississippi River was in 1878 in Kentucky. By the turn of the century, it was restricted to the swamps of the central Florida. The last known wild specimen was killed Okeechobee County, Florida in 1904, and the last captive bird died in the Cincinnati Zoo on February 21, 1918. This was the male specimen, Incus, that died within a year of his mate, Lady Jane. Additional reports of the birds were made in Occoquan County, Florida, until the late 1920s, but these are not supported by specimens. However, two sets of eggs, purportedly taken from active nests in 1927, are in a collection of Florida Museum of Natural History, and genetic testing could prove the species was still breeding at the time. Not until 1939, however, did the American Ornithologist Society declared the Carolina parakeet to be extinct. The IUCN has listed the species as extinct since 1920. In 1937, three parakeets resembling these species were sighted and filmed in the swamps of Georgia. However, the American Ornithologist Union analyzed the film and concluded that they had probably filmed feral parakeets a year later in 1938. The flock of parakeets was apparently sighted by a group of experienced anthropologists in the swamps of the Santee River Basin in South Carolina, but this sighting was doubted by most other ornithologists. The birds were never seen again after these sightings, and shortly after, a portion of the area was destroyed to make way for power lines, making this species' continued existence unlikely. And the reason for their extinction. The evidence is indicative that humans had at least contributed role in the extinction of the Carolina parakeet through a variety of means. The chief was deforestation in the 18th and 19th centuries. Hunting played a significant role, both for decorative use of their colorful feathers, for example, adornment of women's hats, and for reduction of crop predation. This was partly offset by the recognition of their value in controlling invasive cucklebears. Minor roles were played by capture for pet trade and, as noted in Pacific Standard, by the introduction for crop pollination of European honeybees that competed for nest sites, a factor that excavated their decline to extinction was the flocking behavior that led them to return to a variety of dead and lying birds, enabling wholesale slaughter. The final extinction of a species in the early years of the 20th century is somewhat of a mystery, as it happened so rapidly. Vigorous flocks with many juveniles and reproducing pairs were noted as late as 1896, and the birds were long-lived in captivity, but they had virtually disappeared by 1904. Significant nest sites remained intact, so deforestation was not the final cause. American anthropologist Noel speculates that the most likely cause seemed to be that the birds scrambled to poultry diseases, although no recent or historical records even exists of a New World parrot population being affiliated by domesticated poultry disease, meaning there is no record or even evidence of it. The modern poultry scourge Newcastle disease was not detected until 1926 in Indonesia, and only subsequent from one it was reported in the United States in 1938, as well as genetic research on samples did not show any significant presence of birds' viruses, though this does not solely rule out diseases. Fortunately, the Carolina parakeets are extinct. Such a shame. And I always have this question: why didn't they just leave them alone? Like, never bother them. Why didn't they leave them alone? What was so special about the Carolina parakeet? I mean, they were hunted for their feathers for making hats and other things, but that's just ridiculous. But anyways, like and subscribe, and see you later, guys.